Hello everyone, welcome to Frightful Whispers. I'm here to guide you into the shadows tonight. I know you're using this video to unwind and drift off to sleep. So, before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Where are you watching from? And what time is it for you? Now, get cozy, relax, and let the whispers of the night take over. The fog has always been my canvas. I've been obsessed with capturing the perfect shot for as long as I can remember, but it's never been about the ordinary. The sunsets, the smiling faces. They never interested me. No, I wanted something deeper, something raw and haunting. And then, there was the forest. That misty, eerie forest just outside town. You've probably heard the stories. Everyone in the town talks about it. The strange whispers, the figures that appear in the fog, the strange things that happen when you wander too deep into the woods. They say it's cursed, that something is wrong with that mist, but I've always dismissed it as just superstition. I see the world differently. To me, that fog, it wasn't something to fear, it was something to capture. I remember the first time I went into that forest, camera in hand, heart racing with excitement. The fog was thicker than usual that day, wrapping itself around the trees like a living thing, twisting in ways that made you question what was real and what wasn't. It was perfect. I could feel the possibilities in the air, thick with mystery and waiting for me to reveal its secrets. As I stepped further into the woods, the damp earth beneath my boots made a satisfying crunch. The air was cold, almost biting, and the smell of wet leaves mixed with the earthiness of the forest filled my senses. It was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that feels almost unnatural. But I wasn't worried, I was eager, focused on the shot I was going to get. The fog pressed in around me, curling at the edges of my vision. The trees, twisted and gnarled, seemed to loom in the mist, like old, forgotten sentinels guarding a secret. I could barely see beyond a few feet. The path was invisible now, swallowed up by the mist that seemed to breathe with me. But that's when I felt it. A pull, deep inside me. I wasn't alone in that fog, and it wasn't just the trees or the wind. Something was there, something hidden in the mist. I raised my camera, my fingers trembling with anticipation. I had to capture it. This was it, the shot I had been waiting for. I clicked the shutter, the light of the flash cutting through the fog for just a moment. And that's when I saw it. A face. At first, I thought I was imagining things. The figure was blurry, indistinct, like a shadow that didn't belong. But it was there, unmistakably human. Eyes wide, mouth open, silent, watching me. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. I clicked the shutter again, hoping to catch more, hoping it would reveal itself fully. But as I moved closer, the fog shifted, swirling tighter around me. The figure, it, was gone, vanished into the mist, leaving behind only the whisper of my own breath. But something inside me refused to let it go. I had to know. I had to find out what I had captured, what I had seen. I wasn't afraid. I couldn't be. I had to take more shots. So I pushed deeper into the fog. Every step I took, the air seemed to grow colder, the mist heavier. It wrapped around me like an embrace, suffocating, almost intimate. It was like the fog itself was alive, pulling me in, urging me forward. And then I heard it. Whispers. Soft at first. So soft that I thought they were just the wind rustling through the leaves. But no, it was more than that. These whispers, they were calling me. My name. Lena. Lena. I whipped around, the camera still in my hand. The fog had thickened, and I could barely see anything around me. The figures from before, they were there, again. Faces, their eyes wide, their mouths gaping in silent screams, like they were trying to reach out to me. I should have turned back. I should have run. But there was something in me that couldn't. Something that kept urging me forward. The mist was calling me, pulling me closer, and I couldn't resist. I clicked the shutter again, faster now, desperate to capture whatever it was, to freeze the moment. But then, I saw something I couldn't explain, my own face. Not in a reflection, not in a mirror, but right there, in the fog. My face, distorted and twisted, eyes wide with terror, mouth open in a scream. But it wasn't me, not really. It was as if the mist had taken my image and twisted it into something wrong. I staggered backward, heart pounding in my chest, my mind screaming at me to run. But I couldn't. I felt something cold wrap around my ankles, pulling me down, dragging me into the mist. My fingers gripped the camera one last time, the shutter clicking again, the last photo I would ever take. And just before everything went black, I saw it again. My face, trapped in the fog, staring at me, eyes wide, forever frozen in that moment of fear. The next morning, the fog was gone, and the forest was silent, as though nothing had ever happened. Except it had. I knew it had. Because when I went back to town, another photographer found something new in the mist. My face. But it wasn't just in the photos. It was there, in the fog, waiting for the next one to come. Waiting for someone else to get too close. And now, they're calling for you. I can't stop thinking about it. The face. That shadow in the fog. The way it watched me with eyes that weren't just seeing, but knowing. And when I developed the photos, each one more unsettling than the last, it was like the fog had reached out from the lens itself and grabbed hold of me. That day in the forest, I thought it was just the mist playing tricks. I mean, fog has a way of distorting everything, doesn't it? But that face, that wasn't just a trick. It couldn't have been. I've spent years behind a camera, capturing things that others can't see, but this felt different. It felt real, and it stayed with me long after I left the woods. The moment I stepped into my darkroom that night, the air seemed to change. It was as if the room itself knew something I didn't. The hum of the developing machine filled the silence, but I was far too focused on what had happened earlier to care about the usual noise of the chemicals in the paper. My heart raced as I slid the first roll of film into the developing tray. I needed to see. I needed to know what I'd captured, even if it made my skin crawl. As the images began to materialize, I felt my stomach tighten. The first photo. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a trick of light. It wasn't fog or shadows or a fluke. There, in the mist, was a face. Not a blur, not a smear, a face. Eyes wide, pupils empty, staring directly into the camera, directly into me. And that mouth, twisted, silent, frozen in a scream that I knew couldn't have come from anyone alive. I froze. My hands shook as I pulled the photo from the tray. I stared at it, unable to look away. I blinked, thinking it was my mind playing tricks on me. But when I looked again, there it was. Clearer than anything I'd ever seen before. A face in the fog, waiting. Watching me. I moved on to the next roll, hoping for something different. But each photo that developed was the same. There was no escape from the eyes. No escape from the faces that seemed to follow me, no matter how many times I looked away. They were in the fog. They were in every shot. The same faces, same eyes, all trapped in the mist, all staring at me, no matter where I pointed my camera. With each photograph, the feeling in my chest grew heavier, suffocating. My fingers were slick with sweat as I slid the next roll into the developer, but I already knew what would happen. More faces, more eyes, more twisted mouths, all silently pleading with me with someone, with something. The last roll of film I developed was the worst. I don't even know how to explain it. The image came into focus, and it was like I wasn't even in control of my own body anymore. I was staring at the photo in front of me, but it wasn't just the image that made my blood run cold. It was the thing standing in the fog behind the faces. There, just barely visible in the mist, was the unmistakable shape of a person. A person that shouldn't have been there. A person who was too clear, too defined. The figure was standing perfectly still, watching me, staring at me. I pulled the photo closer, trying to make sense of it. But the more I stared at it, the more something shifted in my gut. The figure in the photo, there was something wrong with it. Its posture, its presence, it felt off. And as the final details revealed themselves, it became unmistakable. The face, it was mine. But not in the way I'd expected. The eyes were wide, yes, the mouth open, as if in a scream. But it wasn't me, not really. The face that looked back at me from the photo wasn't my own. It was distorted, twisted. The horror was there, frozen in time, as if the mist had captured a version of me that I didn't recognize. A version of me I was afraid to recognize. I couldn't breathe. I dropped the photograph, my fingers trembling. My pulse hammered in my ears, drowning out everything else. But then, the whispers started. At first, it was so soft, I thought I was imagining it. But they grew louder, clearer, until I could no longer ignore them. Lena, Lena. The voice was unmistakable, as if someone was standing right behind me, speaking my name in the thick, damp air of the dark room. I spun around, my heart racing, my hand instinctively reaching for the camera, but there was no one there. No one in the shadows. Nothing but the creeping fog in my mind. But the whispers? They wouldn't stop. Lena, come back. I had to leave. I had to get out of that room, away from those photos. But as I moved toward the door, something stopped me. The photos, the face, my own face. It was like they were reaching out to me, urging me to go back, to find something. Something I had missed. And that was when I realized what I already knew deep down. I wasn't just photographing the fog. I wasn't just capturing the mist. I was becoming a part of it, the forest, the fog, the faces. It wasn't finished with me, not by a long shot, and that damned camera. It wasn't just a tool, it was a key. I didn't know what I was meant to find, but I knew one thing for sure. The whispers were getting louder, and I couldn't stop them. I had to go back. But deep down, I feared that if I did, I might never return. The first time I heard the whispers, I thought it was just my imagination. The kind of thing you tell yourself when you're alone in the dark, when you're haunted by things you don't want to admit. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Something inside me had snapped. I wasn't alone, not anymore. And the fog wasn't just fog. It was something else. It was alive. That night I tried to forget. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. The photos, the faces, the way they followed me even after I left the forest. I thought maybe the fog had just played tricks on me. But it wasn't just in the forest, was it? It followed me home. I remember the moment it began. The first whisper, soft and faint, carried on the wind. Lena. My name. I froze, the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. I turned quickly, my eyes scanning the empty street, the fog creeping in thick and heavy, but there was no one. The street was empty, silent. I laughed nervously, telling myself it was the wind. The fog, the air, it was thick, heavy. Maybe it was just the sound of the mist shifting, of the world bending in on itself. But then it came again. Louder this time. Lena. I swallowed, my heart beginning to pound in my chest. I looked over my shoulder, but there was still no one. The streets, the trees, everything around me was hidden beneath the fog. But it wasn't the fog that made my skin crawl. It was the voice. It was familiar. It was mine. But it wasn't. Something felt off. Something felt wrong. I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts that clouded my mind. You're just hearing things, I told myself, walking faster, the sound of my boots muffled by the thick mist. But it didn't stop. The whispers, they grew clearer, more insistent. Lena, come closer. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't move. The voice, my name, it wasn't just calling me, it was urging me, telling me to step forward, to come closer. But I didn't move. I couldn't. I felt paralyzed, like I was being pulled in every direction at once. I told myself it was nothing, just the fog, just the sound of my thoughts playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew. The voice wasn't just in my head, it was there. It was calling from the fog, from the dark, and it knew me. It knew my name. I didn't turn back. I couldn't. I tried to walk faster, to get to my apartment, but every step felt heavier than the last. The mist was suffocating now, pressing in on me from all sides, as if the world itself was closing in. The whispers followed me, louder, sharper. Lena. I felt it then, a tug, deep in my chest. The voice wasn't just calling anymore, it was pulling me, like an invisible hand grasping at my heart, urging me to come back, to listen. I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't run anymore. My legs moved before my brain could even process it. I stepped off the path, the cold air biting into my skin, and I followed the voice. It felt like I was moving in a dream, like my body wasn't really mine. The fog was so thick now I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. Everything was distorted, twisted by the mist. And yet I kept moving. The voice, my name. It wasn't just a whisper now, it was a command, a demand. Lena. It was so close now. It was as though the voice was coming from just behind me, breathing down my neck. I turned around, panic rising in my chest, my heart pounding, my breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps. But there was no one, nothing. The street was empty. The trees were lost in the fog. I was alone. Yet the whispers, oh God, the whispers, they wouldn't stop. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran as fast as I could, my feet pounding against the wet ground, my chest tightening with every step. But the whispers, they followed me. They were there, in every corner of the mist, in every shadow. And then, just when I thought I was free, when I thought I had outrun it, I heard it again. Lena. I stopped. I couldn't move. The voice, it wasn't just a whisper anymore. It was in my head, in my bones, and it was getting louder. And then I realized I had never been alone. The whispers weren't just coming from the fog. They were coming from inside it, from something else, something I couldn't see, something that was waiting for me to listen. It wasn't just the fog anymore. It was them, the faces, the ones I had captured in my photos, the ones who watched me with their hollow, empty eyes. They had been watching me all along. They had always been there. And now they were calling me back, calling me to join them, to be a part of the mist, to disappear, just like the others. And deep down, I knew. There was no running. There was no escaping. The whispers wouldn't stop. They'd follow me wherever I went. I'd been pulled into their world, and there was nothing I could do to break free. And the worst part? I don't think I want to escape. It wasn't the fog that unnerved me at first. No, it was the faces. The ones that kept appearing, flickering in and out of my sight, like ghosts trapped between the mist and the shadows. I had come to the forest for the perfect shot, to capture something no one else had seen. But what I didn't expect, what I couldn't have possibly prepared for, was that the forest would capture me instead. I had thought the fog was just that, fog. A thick, strange mist that clung to the trees and the ground, distorting the world around me, blurring the edges of reality. It was perfect for my photos. But as the mist grew denser, I began to feel watched. The sensation crept over me, subtle at first, just a brush against the back of my neck, a tingling that raised the hairs on my arms. I shrugged it off, attributing it to nerves. The fog could make you feel isolated, could make you feel small. But then, I saw them. At first, I thought it was the fog playing tricks on my eyes, just the way it shifted, the way it twisted the shapes of the trees. But as I raised my camera and adjusted the lens, I caught sight of something. Someone. A face. I couldn't see it clearly at first, the mist clouding the details. But as I focused, they emerged. More faces, their expressions blurry, distorted, but undeniably human. They appeared in the fog, in the corners of my vision, their eyes wide, staring at me. They weren't just shapes or reflections of the light. No, they were alive. Alive in a way I couldn't explain, their hollow gazes following me, observing me, as if they had been waiting. I snapped a photo, my hands trembling, but the moment the flash cut through the fog, I knew it was real. The faces didn't disappear, they stayed. In the photograph, their eyes seemed to burn through the lens, through the flash, straight into me. I could almost hear them, no words, but a presence, an awareness that made the air around me grow thick and cold. I took another shot, and another. The faces multiplied, filling the fog, shifting in and out of focus, all staring at me, some in terror, others in silent anguish, their mouths twisted in screams I couldn't hear. But there was one thing they all shared, a hollow emptiness behind their eyes. They weren't alive, they couldn't be, but they were there, and they were watching. I tried to step back, tried to break the trance I was falling into, but the mist pulled me closer. The faces, their faces, kept multiplying, their expressions growing more distorted with every photo I took. Some seemed to smile, but it was wrong, unnatural, stretching too wide, too far. And then I saw it. One of them smiled at me, but it wasn't just any smile. It was a grin, too sharp, its teeth jagged, broken like shards of glass. I recoiled, the hairs on the back of my neck prickling, but the face didn't fade. It lingered in the mist, its eyes following me, its mouth frozen in that horrifying, twisted grin. I should have run. My instincts screamed at me to turn and flee, but I couldn't. I couldn't stop taking the photos. I needed to capture it, to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining this, that what I was seeing was real. But with each shutter I pressed, the faces grew more intense. They closed in on me, the fog swirling tighter, suffocating me with their presence. It felt as though the very mist was alive, wrapping around me, pushing me deeper into the forest. And then, there, at the edge of the fog, I saw something. No, someone. My own face. Not in a reflection, not in a mirror. But there, in the mist, standing just behind the others, twisted and distorted in the same way. My face, wide-eyed, mouth agape in a scream, but not a scream I could hear. It was me, but it wasn't. It was like the mist had taken my reflection and contorted it, changed it, made it something else, something that didn't belong. The eyes were full of terror, but the fear wasn't mine. It wasn't even real. I backed away, my breath coming in sharp gasps, the camera still in my hands, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the face. The whispering in the fog grew louder, clearer, more frantic. "Lena, come closer." The words came from everywhere, from the faces, from the mist. They were all calling me, all pulling me toward them. I was suffocating, drowning in the fog, and yet I couldn't escape. I turned to run, I had to, but my legs wouldn't move. The faces, they were everywhere, in the trees, in the mist, behind me, in front of me, circling around me. Their eyes were locked on me, their twisted expressions following every step, every movement. They weren't just in the photos anymore. They were here, they were with me, and they weren't going to let me go. I dropped my camera, my fingers numb, the world around me spinning as the fog closed in. And just as I tried to turn and run, something cold, so cold, wrapped around my ankle, pulling me to the ground. I screamed, but no sound came out. The faces closed in, the whispers became a deafening chorus, and in the fog I saw them, my face, staring back at me. But it wasn't me anymore, it was them. And I was just another face in the mist. I don't know how to explain it. The fog, it wasn't like any fog I'd ever seen before. It wasn't just mist, it was something else. Something that felt alive, breathing, watching. I had thought I was chasing the perfect shot, that elusive photograph that would define my career. But what I didn't realize was that I was chasing something far darker. And now, the fog was chasing me. At first, it seemed harmless enough. Just the usual, eerie mist that rolled in from the forest, thickening with every passing minute, obscuring the world around me. I'd seen this before. It was nothing new. But this time, something felt different. The whispers started almost immediately. At first, they were barely a whisper, a murmur in the air that I told myself was just the wind. But the more I listened, the clearer it became. Lena. I heard my name, soft, gentle, almost tender. It didn't scare me at first. I thought maybe it was just my imagination. After all, I had been out in the forest alone for hours, snapping photos of the mist, the trees, the eerie landscape. I didn't think much of it until the whispers grew louder. Lena, come closer. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. Who was that? I couldn't see anyone. I was alone in the fog, just my camera and me. But the voice, it knew me. It knew my name. I couldn't explain it, but the air felt thick now, heavier, like it was pressing against me. My feet felt heavier, as if the very earth beneath me was trying to pull me in. I tried to shake it off, to tell myself it was nothing, just my imagination. But the whispering didn't stop. It followed me, grew louder with every step I took. I thought about turning back, about running out of the mist, but something told me I couldn't. Something told me I had to keep going, keep moving forward. So I did. The camera hung heavy around my neck, my fingers trembling, but I couldn't stop. The pull was stronger than my fear, and I had to see it. I had to find out what was in the fog. That's when I saw them. Faces. At first, they were just shadows, barely visible in the thickening mist, but when I raised my camera, my hands trembling as I clicked the shutter, I saw them clearly. Faces in the fog. Eyes wide, staring at me. Eyes full of something dark, empty. Their mouths were open, but no sound came. They didn't move, they just watched. I could feel their gaze, pressing against me, pulling at me. I snapped more photos, my heart pounding in my chest as the faces multiplied. The fog seemed to shift, to move around them, almost like they were part of it. The air grew colder, the mist thicker, and the faces, my God, the faces, they were everywhere. They moved in and out of focus with each shutter I pressed, their eyes following me, locked on me, no matter where I moved. But it wasn't just their eyes, it was their presence. They weren't just images in my camera. They were here, with me, in the fog. And then I saw it, my own face. But it wasn't my face. Not really. It was twisted, distorted, like a reflection in broken glass, as if the mist itself had taken me and warped me into something else. My eyes were wide, unblinking. My mouth hung open, but it was silent. The face in the mist was me, but not me. It was me, twisted, stretched, wrong. I felt my stomach churn, my breath catch in my throat as I stared at the face in the fog. I raised my camera again, my hands shaking so violently I could barely hold the lens steady. I snapped the shot, but the moment the flash lit up the fog, everything changed. The face in the mist, my face, moved. The mouth, which had been open in that silent scream, twisted into something far worse. A smile. But it wasn't a smile of joy. It was wide, impossibly wide, stretching too far, like the face was tearing itself apart, like the mist was forcing it to grin. My heart pounded in my chest, but I couldn't look away. The eyes, my eyes, were still locked onto me, but now they were full of something else. Hunger. A cold dread washed over me as the fog thickened around me, the faces closing in, pressing against me. I couldn't breathe. The whispers returned, louder, frantic now. "Lena, come closer." The voice wasn't just in my head, it was everywhere. The mist was alive, suffocating me, wrapping around me. I tried to run, tried to move, but my legs felt like they were stuck in mud, each step slower than the last. The faces, they were everywhere now. I couldn't escape them. My face, my own face, was staring at me from every corner of the fog, grinning at me, waiting for me. I reached out with trembling hands, but the mist closed in, thickening until I could barely see. I could feel it now, the weight of all those faces pressing in on me, the air growing colder with every second, until I couldn't breathe anymore. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, more desperate. And then, with a sudden, sickening lurch, I felt a cold hand grip my wrist, pulling me toward the mist. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The faces were everywhere now, my face, twisted, grinning, stretching wider with each passing second. The fog had consumed me. It had swallowed me whole, and now there was no escape. I was in the fog now, I was one of them. And when the next photographer comes to the forest, the last thing they will see in the mist will be me. It had been weeks since I stepped into that cursed forest, weeks since the fog swallowed me whole. I didn't think I could ever escape it. The whispers, the faces, those hollow, empty eyes, they all still haunted me. It was as if the fog had become a part of me, a shadow that clung to my every thought, to my every step. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that I wasn't the only one the fog was waiting for. A new photographer had come to town. His name was Marcus, and he was exactly like I had been, young, eager, hungry for the perfect shot. He didn't believe the stories, the superstitions the townsfolk whispered about. They warned him about the forest, about the fog, but he wasn't afraid. He thought he could control it, bend it to his will with the click of a shutter. He thought he could take whatever he wanted from it. I watched him from the edge of the trees as he approached the forest, camera slung around his neck, eyes wide with excitement. I could see the spark in him, the same spark I had once had. He didn't know what he was walking into. He didn't know what was waiting for him. The fog crept in behind him like an old friend, thick and suffocating, swallowing the world whole. He barely noticed, too focused on his quest for that perfect shot. He moved into the mist without a second thought, his fingers tight on his camera, determined to capture the forest in all its eerie beauty. I wanted to scream, I wanted to warn him, but the fog had stolen my voice, just like it had stolen me. I was trapped here, a part of it now, and I had no power to stop what was coming. The fog had claimed me, and now it was claiming him. As Marcus walked deeper into the mist, I saw it, the faces. They didn't just appear in the photographs anymore. They were here, with him. I could feel them, their eyes watching, waiting, as if they were eager for his arrival. They started small, barely there at first, just shadows flickering in the corners of his vision. But with each step he took, they grew clearer. Their eyes locked on him, their mouths twisted in silent screams. I could feel the panic rising in his chest, the realization dawning on him that he wasn't alone, that he was never alone. I watched, helpless, as he took photo after photo, his hands shaking with excitement and fear. He didn't see it yet, but I did. The fog wasn't just fog. It wasn't just an atmospheric effect or a pretty backdrop for a shot. It was alive. It was hunting. I saw it then. The flicker of a face that I knew all too well. It was my face. Not the face I remembered, the one I saw in mirrors and photos. No, this face was wrong. Distorted. Twisted. My own face, staring back at me through the fog, wide-eyed and mouth open in a scream that was silent in the mist. It wasn't my reflection, it was something else. Something darker, something that had been made by the fog. I saw Marcus freeze. I saw his breath catch in his throat as he turned, slowly, and met my face in the fog. He didn't know what he was looking at. He didn't understand, just like I hadn't at first. But in that moment he knew, he saw it too. And then the whispers started. Lena. It was my name, spoken softly, hauntingly, from all around him, from inside the fog. I could hear it in his breath as it quickened, could see the panic flickering in his eyes. He looked around frantically, but there was nothing. No one. Just the fog, just the faces, just me. The mist closed in around him like it had closed in around me, and I wanted to scream at him to run, to leave, to get away before it was too late. But I couldn't. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. I was just another face in the fog now, waiting for someone else to fall into the trap. Lena, his voice cracked. He was shaking now, looking behind him as if expecting to see something, or someone, following him. But there was no one. The mist swallowed everything. He looked up, and for a moment his eyes locked with mine. That was when I saw it. The truth. I wasn't just in the fog. I was the fog. The faces weren't just faces anymore. They were us, trapped, waiting. I could feel them, the ones who had come before me. I could feel their hunger, their desire to pull the next victim into their world, into the never-ending fog. And I realized, with sickening clarity, that Marcus was never going to leave. He was just another soul for the mist to consume, just another face to add to the collection. His camera dropped to the ground with a soft thud, but his hands didn't stop shaking. His eyes darted around, desperate, as if looking for a way out, but there was no escape. Not from the fog, not from the faces, not from this. And then it happened. The faces began to close in on him, my face, his face, all of us, together, now, waiting for the next one to come. The fog thickened, swirling around him, pulling him in like it had pulled me. I saw his terror, his realization that there was no way out. He was part of the fog now, part of the faces. He didn't even scream. There was no time. The mist swallowed him whole. And as the fog began to settle again, I could feel the shift. The quiet, the stillness, the waiting. I was no longer alone. The next time someone enters the forest, they won't just find the mist. They'll find Marcus, his face, my face, staring back at them, waiting for the next photographer, the next victim. And they will become us. Thank you for venturing into the shadows with me here at Frightful Whispers. Remember, the darkness holds secrets, but also whispers truths to those who dare to listen. If tonight's tale sent shivers down your spine, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It helps keep the fire of fright alive. Rest easy, but keep one eye open, for the night is never truly still. Until we meet again, stay vigilant, stay curious, and let the whispers guide you.